Hi, you're watching Start to Sold, and this video is about how to launch a clothing line in 4 steps in the United States. And today I'm interviewing expert clothing designer Michael Lew. Thanks for joining us, Michael.
Thanks. It's great to be here. And I could see that we both are respecting social distancing, which is great.
Yeah, you're in a completely different state. We're not in the same room. We're using Zoom, so we're doing a good
Right.
job.
Yeah, we're doing our part. And I hope everybody else out there is too.
Yeah. And Michael and I have been friends for a very long time, and he actually runs Imaginary Concepts, and they actually launch clothing line brands for private label companies, so Men's Warehouse and companies like that, but also for celebrities and anyone out there who wants to launch their own clothing line. And so he's an expert. If you want to reach out to him and possibly work with him, we'll have his website in the profile below. But today we're going to interview him to answer some questions about designing clothing in America. So Michael, would you mind answering this question? What are the pros and cons to manufacturing clothing in the United States?
Well, in the United States, there's basically four pros that I believe in. One of it is that you could get quick prototypes made, and you could see everything being finalized, right in front of you. You don't have to wait for anything to be shipped over from another country. And then also the whole lead time for production. Lead time is probably one of the most things is to get to market. So you obviously don't have a lot of transit time from getting product to one country to another country and then back to, the USA. And then the third one is just being able to adapt to change really fast because it is in our own backyard. So if you have to make some quick changes on design or manufacturing or something, you could do that right away. And then the fourth thing is that you could keep your eye on your business a lot better because you could see where everything is going when it comes from just supply chain to your money to find out who you're going to use for shipping. You could just really focus on that area. And I think that those are the four things that give doing stuff in America is great.
That makes sense. Making a phone call and speaking the same language as the person that you're reaching out to, or the factory worker, or the person who's running the factory, that probably makes things very easy. There's got to be some cons. So, what are the cons to manufacturing products in the United States?
Well, one of the biggest things is that we all want product. I believe in product made in the USA, but unfortunately, our labor is a lot higher. So cost is one of the hardest things. And then and there's basically about 6 points out there. And the first one is the price point. The price point is high. And then the second one is basically you're going to be spending a lot more time on managing everything, especially the supply chain, because you cannot get everything that you need in the US. And you are going to have to find things that might have to be shipped overseas. And it might take a lot of time, but there's a lot of research that you need to do when you are working in a country that doesn't have unlimited resources for raw materials. And then the third thing is that you're very limited on manufacturing because in USA, there's only certain things that we could really make well and make it at affordable price. And you have to seek after those type of factories, and they might not be in your backyard. And remember, you're on the West Coast and on the East Coast, and you have the Midwest. There's a lot of miles that you would have to travel and pay to go back and forth if you want to try to manage it. The other thing too is on the fourth thing is that it's technology. We don't have all the technology that manufacturers have in the US. So you're not going to be able to get everything made that you see from other countries, like in Asia. The tooling, the way they do the sewing, the way they make rivets, the way they make labels, the way their thread is, it's all different. And you might not be able to get that in the US. And then they have to import it. And then that's going to take a long time. So it's not like a one-stop shop. And that's what people think it is when you're doing something in your own backyard. And then the last thing is that you end up spending a whole lot of money, more than what you budgeted, just because there's always these little added things that you have to pay for. If it's a simple thing like freight, shipping something from the East Coast to the West Coast because you need it to make it, that's going to cost a lot of money. Materials tend to fluctuate because the pricing they gave you last month might be different than this month. But when you're working in other places outside of the US, your prices are locked in no matter what ends up happening, because that's the price you negotiated with. And then those are the 6 things that I think are the cons.
It's interesting that it's that much more expensive in the United States, and that the technology is so significantly different.
Yeah.
And there's probably also a very big difference in skilled labor. I know that in products I've made in terms of packaging, the labor in different countries, some people that work at factories have been doing that for just years. So
Generations. Yeah.
generations. And so there's just a significant and measurable difference in quality between products made sometimes in that factory versus, ones that I've seen in America. That's not true of everything. And I agree with you that I prefer American made clothing and products. And I love the idea of supporting American workers. And
Me
it's
too.
just a great opportunity. It's what it sounds like is it's an opportunity for us as a country to invest more in our own manufacturing for the future. So
Hmm.
that's good to hear your perspective of what the situation is currently. What are we dealing with
Right.
currently? And I'd love to know, if I did still feel that this was what I needed to do, I want to make products in America, or
Hmm.
maybe make most of the product in America. What steps would I go through to be able to start that process and bring an idea to fruition?
Well, I look at there's always like 4 steps that you would need to do. And the first step is that it's always about having a good, solid business plan. I mean, you have to understand like your comp landscape, who's your competitor out there. You have to understand exactly like what is it that you want to sell to people, and why do they even want to buy it? If it's clothing or if it's soft goods or hard goods, it doesn't matter. Um, and then you just got to know that there's just a lot of things that you can make well in the U.S., but you have to find those things that could be made in the U.S. really well. And certain countries make things better than other countries, so you have to really know your demographics on where you're going to go. And then I've always believed that when you first start off, you should have like a very strong 4-legged chair. And I always believe that you got to have the product, you got to have the manufacturing, you have to have the sales and marketing channel, and then you got to have the money. Those 4 things are so important that people don't realize, but they have to have that in play first. Okay, and that's the most. The second step is making sure that that your product that is being made in the USA is that it's priced out fairly and competitive, because people aren't really going to pay for something more because it's made in the USA. They're going to pay for something that is made fairly for what the product is. So you can't take it for granted because you make it in country that it's automatically going to sell because it's made in the USA, which I think I'm for that. But you have to be real when it comes to costing. Okay. The third thing is just understanding, your budget through everything and making sure that you stay within your budget. Because like I said before, we tend to spend a lot more money here domestically because we kind of get anxious and excited, and we're going to just start dishing out money because we're going to be, oh, well, we need this, we need that, we got to get this done, we got to fly there, we got to fly that. And then you realize you spent so much money on R&D before you even got your product made or even ready to launch. So you have to really maintain your cash flow. And then the fourth thing is, you just have to make sure that you keep up with everything, in the sense of like once you get the product ready, you got to make sure that you have solid marketing and that you have good packaging, and people are going to be able to recognize that your product is different from everybody else. You have to have a story. You have to have a little handle on what's going to make you different, because marketing is going to be the key thing after your product is made and ready to be sold. And you just don't open up a website and you're going to sell a gazillion copies of whatever you're making. You have to make sure that you have a marketing plan, and that's something that a lot of people don't think about. And I suggest that you hire outside people to do that, because they always know more than we think we know, and that's why they're marketing people. So those are the 4 things that I think are the biggest steps on just how to move forward, and that's where I'm at.
I like that. So a lot of the ideas that you're talking about is the strategy. There's so much strategy that goes into launching a product, and you need to have a business insight. And you shared with us a video. We have another video that's an interview of you, and we were talking about a lot more depth of the details of how do you build that business plan, the amount of money, the lead time, all of those things. So if
Mhm.
anyone watching the video says, but wait, like what are the specifics? Watch that other video, and Michael will break all that stuff down so that you can write out your strategy and really think through the amount of money that you're going to need, the amount of time, all of
Yeah.
that stuff. Um, and then, and that's what Michael's areas of expertise is designing the product, figuring out the right factory, the right materials, the right designs, and all of that stuff goes into really making sure that product is quality. And so again, if you want to work with him, you should reach out to him. His website will be linked below, and
Mhm.
he can help to create really cool looking designs that bring your ideas to life. But once you have all that stuff figured out, you've created your product and you have a marketing strategy, and you're about to pull the trigger, I think it's so important to talk about the risks that could happen. And
Right.
Michael and I have laughed about the challenges of risks and how hard it is to explain to someone before they start their project all the things that could go wrong. And it's so important to know so that you can protect yourself, and so that you just really know what you're getting yourself into, and
Mhm.
protect, make sure that those risks don't happen. You got to mitigate risk. You can't eliminate it completely. So what are some of the risks that we need to worry about when we begin considering launching our product and making it in America? How do we protect ourselves? What do we got to worry about? What are the risks?
Uh-huh. Well, there's three that I always follow. And then the first one is that not knowing what you're up against is always the biggest risk, that you have to really know what the worst thing that could happen. And are you still willing to move forward? Because we always look at the brighter things, that it's going to succeed. But if you're willing to know that there could be failure, then that would be the first thing that you're willing to accept. And that's just me going through, both of us through personal experiences and stuff. The second thing is just, having, the risk that we think is that we think that we know everything. And for me, and I know for other people, I think it's important for you to know that you need to know how to sell your product. You need to know how to manufacture your product. You need to know how to get it out the door. And then you need to know, how do you get paid? I mean, those are the key things, is that you work so hard, but you're going to find out through that series that it's going to be so hard to get that money to get out the door and get paid. And that's something that, we have to really be clear on. And then the third thing is that I always tell everybody, you have to have a great attorney, okay? You have to have a great CPA, and you got to have a whole lot of money, because attorney is great because they're going to give you all the advice you need. CPA is going to tell you if you can do it and if you can afford it. And then the other thing is that you got to have enough finance resources to even start. So that's something that's important when you look at your budget, is that you have to look at that. If you don't have those things, you're going to be risking a lot. And those are the three things that I've learned through my experience, and they're constantly evolving. And I try to keep current on everything that I know I need to do to continue to run the business that I'm doing.
Well, I appreciate you saying these things, because I think out of all the different types of products out there, I think clothing is actually one that people don't realize there's a really long lead time
Hmm.
and a lot that goes into developing product. And therefore, you should be planning a whole lot more than you even do with other products, because even how clothing can expire in terms of fashion, that there's
Right.
just, it has to hit at the right time. You have to deliver it. You don't get paid for quite a long time.
Hmm.
And so what you're really saying is you have to strategize in advance. You really should find some experts. You need to be well thought out about the timing, the money, the cash flow, all of those pieces before you actually get going. And even for someone to know and calculate the cost of failure. How much would it cost? What's the highest cost it would happen to me if this didn't go right?
Right.
You may not know, because if product doesn't get shipped, or it gets shipped wrong and you have to replace it, it's not just what you're putting in. There's additional fees beyond what you can see, um, that could harm you in the long run. And so I think you're right that manufacturing stuff in the United States, or literally anywhere, you really need to have a strong plan, and be sure that you talk to some experts to make that plan before you actually pull the trigger, so it's a success.
Well, one thing that I just wanted to share that I made my biggest mistake on was when I first started doing product and I just didn't anticipate extra cost. And when I quoted the prices out to the customer, I'm locked into that. And then I got super excited that it was a nice big order. And the bottom line is I practically did the whole thing for free. And thank goodness that it didn't, we didn't lose any money, but we didn't make any money, but I learned a big, big lesson. And those are the things that you have to be prepared for, that it might have taken 8 months to get to that point, and that was your time frame. And now you're not getting paid to even move forward. So what are you going to do? You have to be able to understand that there's a lot of risk involved. Your dreams are at risk and you have to know how to adapt. And doing it in the USA, there's pros and cons of being able to do that. So you just have to pick out what works for you the best and what you're able to accept.
Can you give us one or two pieces of advice that you think will make someone successful? The key, what will define a successful product if it was to be launched in the United States? We just talked about the risks, and I figured you should share maybe some key elements you've seen of products that do well, or that business owners that do well.
Well, I think that we understood that there was a big surge in the apparel industry when everybody went overseas for labor. Okay, but when it came down to it, there was one item that did really, really well, made in America, and that was basically knitted products like t-shirts, joggers, because we had a lot of knitting mills here in the USA still, and a lot of factories can handle that type of product. So that ended up becoming an item that was good, which is basically, knitted fashion items became very popular and stayed very strong here in the US. So even when companies like Forever 21 was getting product made all over the world, but then when it came to their knits, they kept their knits in LA on the West Coast because of the pricing is affordable, and there's a lot of resources of factories that can do that. So that's why when you go back of understanding making something in the US, you got to understand what is it that they could make here and be very competitive of going outside of the country. And that's something that was successful for us because that's where we started doing t-shirts. And that's how we were able to compete against the market because we did knitwear.
I never knew that the United States was so excellent at making knitwear. I think that should definitely inspire someone out there who's watching this video. And uh,
Mhm.
one of the less tangible things that I think we both would agree help entrepreneurs to succeed no matter where they're making their products is this resiliency that we were talking about before we started filming this video. That
Mhm.
perspective, that of the ability to rejoice in the things that you did right, and
Yeah.
brush off your shoulder when a couple things go wrong. Expect
Mhm.
that those things go wrong and not take it personally. You have to calculate it as part of your risk, and you just dust yourself off and get back up and keep going. And that's when you hit your stride. Is the first couple of times are going to be super rough, and you work it out every time
Right.
you keep working through, and that's what makes an excellent entrepreneur. You
Right.
mentioned.
And I think that even in both of what we both do, one of the things too that is very important is to make sure that you have people out that are around you that aren't so connected to what you're doing. Because sometimes getting input from people from the outside help you out to know that, okay, my idea isn't the greatest. Because we get so locked in and we get so tunnel vision that we're not listening to what's really working because we think that's the direction. And then what happens is that we don't want people to be just cheerleaders to say, yeah, it's great, it's wonderful, I would buy it. And then when you go on the market, those people that said that they would buy it, they don't even buy it. Because you don't need cheerleaders. You need to really be open minded to the product that you're designing or the product you're manufacturing, because I know I do. I get caught up that I think mine is the greatest and the best thing that came to fruition in fashion, but sometimes it's not. And you have to know how, like you say, you just got to like brush everything off and start all over and know exactly like like know exactly what you got to do next, and you got to pick up the wall. It's almost like throw everything on the wall and whatever sticks sticks. But if it doesn't stick, get back and pick it up and start redesigning it. So those are the things that I think are important for, and those are the things that are great that you can do in the U.S. is because you can react fast.
Right. Yeah. And there's a lot of even financial forgiveness in the United States where you can still sometimes get credit. It's easier to get access to credit and support from companies in the United States. There's a lot of pros here. Protection of intellectual property, I think, is probably another one. I just realized it's true. If you make products in different countries, sometimes you can't protect your ideas. It's harder.
Right.
So,
And
yeah.
especially in fashion, you can't really patent anything.
Right.
I mean, it's just so hard to. That's why it's something that you have to be quick and you have to be fast to market, because apparel is very trendy unless you're coming up with something very unique, and it's more of a long lasting type of apparel product. But if you're going into fashion, it's like you got to know your supply chain really quick. Got to react fast, get it to market, and be able to have the resources to get it out the door and then get paid.
And then get paid. That's always important.
It is. At the end of the day, you just go, my gosh, I just got to get paid.
Right. Yeah. Well, I so appreciate you joining me on this call and sharing with anyone who's watching, wants to
Mhm.
design their own clothing line, your expert experience and giving some advice about designing products to be made in America. So thank you so much, Michael. If anyone wants to
Yeah.
reach you, where can they find you?
They can reach us at our website at imaginaryconcepts.com. And that's probably the best way to do it. We have our email address on there. And I think that that's pretty much all they need.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. And stay